And like you're saying, it's going downhill in a rapid way.
Yeah, in a very rapid way. And in the meantime, we're priming wars and with Russia and wars with Iran and possibly wars with China. And we got no business. We couldn't whip any one of those countries, much less three of them. And everything they do, the financing, the economic policy, I mean, they're destroying the kids in schools. You don't get an education anymore. You
Yeah.
get an indoctrination. Oh, you're
Vaccination.
born in the wrong body. You're a racist.
Yeah.
This is all school's about. It's all the public school's about. Now, that might not be true in rural Republican areas. I doubt it's true where I am now. Uh, I don't think people would stand for it. I mean, you would actually see people tarred and feathered and run out of the county.
You mentioned increasing government censorship. Look at Zuckerberg's false or forced confession that yes, indeed, they were pressured heavily by the White House to suppress anything that didn't go along with their narrative, anything that the White House didn't approve of, including the real effects of the COVID vaccine and also the Hunter Biden laptop story. So Zuckerberg finally said, yes, it's true. That's what they did. He regrets it and they won't do it again, supposedly.
Well, they will because you see, Musk won't censor for them. So now he's got the Brazilian Attorney General court. The High Court in Brazil is now uh, moving against him. The European Commission is moving against him.
Yeah,
They're moving against him in Washington. Before long, he's going to have so many uh, criminal charges to deal with, he won't be able to run his companies.
yeah. England was trying to extradite him if he passed out any misinformation when he interviewed Trump. I mean,
Yeah,
England's going
yeah,
to extradite an American citizen for free speech?
yeah. That's right. That's I wrote about that.
Yeah,
Uh, the police commissioner in London, I think it was
yeah.
going to would threaten him. He just absolutely threatened him. Well, um, that tells. I mean, we're already in that place now. Imagine if Camilla and this really crazy guy she's got for vice president. I mean, this is one of the far left maniacs.
Walls. Yeah.
He's about as stupid and evil as anybody could be. And he's worse than that guy in Pennsylvania that you got on TV.
Shapiro. Yeah,
Sure.
Josh Shapiro, the one
Yeah,
who covered up what is in all likelihood, all evidence pointing to a murder, and he called it a suicide, insisted it was a suicide. 13 years, the parents have been trying to get the case really investigated, and as Attorney General, which he used as a launching pad for the governorship, said no, it was a clear-cut suicide. And now, as we know, he was almost picked as vice president, and it's known that he has presidential aspirations. So who knows how much of a Josh Shapiro to our detriment we're going to have in our future.
that's right. That's right. So, and where are any other leaders? They don't exist.
Yeah.
We have Shapiro's. We have this guy Camilla's picked. And where are any Republican leaders? Where are they?
So we're at the point of no return. We crossed the Rubicon.
Yeah, I think it's over and done with. If Trump manages to get in, I don't think he'll be able to do anything. Um, he wouldn't be able to get any real strong people appointed because the media would be all over it and the Senate wouldn't confirm. Possibly if the Republicans captured the Senate, they might, but they are just as opposed to Trump as the Democrats
Yeah.
because he's a threat to the status quo. They're
Yeah.
comfortable in the status quo.
Right.
They
They
know
don't-
where the money comes from. They know who they have to speak for.
He's rocking all their boats.
He's rocking all their boats, and I try to think just thinking of all the people in the alternative news and everything, who can he appoint?
Yeah.
Nobody in Washington he can rely on. Nobody. Nobody in the think tanks. Who can he appoint? There's really nobody. And they would have to come from somewhere else outside. But why would they want to go in there and be exposed to the same kind of thing that they've done to Trump? They can do it to them. Look what they did to, what was the general that Trump appointed? Flynn.
Well,
Look
yeah.
what they did to General Flynn. I mean, it was totally made up. They
How about Tulsi Gabbard being followed around by agents because she's a terroristic threat?
Yeah, she's harassed every time she flies. The constant searches. She misses the plane. She can't make connections because they search her again. Yeah, look at what's the UN weapons inspector that
Scott Ritter.
Ritter. Look, they pulled him off the plane, took his passport, invaded his house, stole all his electronics and papers,
Yeah.
and I mean, what for? Because he was going to go to a conference in Russia where there's a discussion of foreign policy. Well, this is what people have always done. What? Uh,
Paul, it strikes me more and more that, as they did in Germany and other countries that became totalitarian governments, it was incremental, slowly in the beginning, and then it became more severe, more extreme, more obvious, but people were conditioned gradually to getting used to it. And now, just what we discussed during this broadcast, I mean, 15 years ago, it would have seemed in the realm of absurdity. They'd never do that. They're doing it, and there's no reaction to it, especially among the mainstream media and the public. Since it's not news, according to the mainstream media, they accept it. So it's this psychological conditioning that they're winning.
Yeah, see, truth is a threat to democracy. That's the official position.
Yeah,
And if you break ranks with the official narrative, tell the truth, you are a domestic terrorist.
yeah,
So anything that threatens their agendas, their explanations, is terrorism. It's already that way.
yeah, yeah.
So it's the only thing that there's still a limit on is the ability to go around rounding people up.
So far,
So far.
yeah.
But I think if Kamala gets in, then that's what we see next happening.
If we talked this way 15 years ago, people would say we're out of our minds. And a lot of people still say that who are not aware of what's going on because, they just watch mainstream media, if at all, and they're busy with their other stuff. And that's the way it's being done.
Yeah, they'll still think you're crazy. Like I say, I don't go speak to Republican groups because I'm not going to go tell them a bunch of crap about how wonderful the world is, which is what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that. I was on the speaker's circuit twice. Once when I came out of the Treasury,
Mm-hmm.
and then a second time when Harvard published my book, The Supply Side Revolution. So I was twice on it. And what I noticed was the only people who were really interested in hearing what you had to say would be a small group, like investors, maybe 40 investors, or a corporate group. Once Pepsi Cola had me come speak, and they were attentive. They wanted to know, the investors wanted to know. But if you went to these big association meetings, they didn't want to hear a word. They just wanted to be entertained. They were
And
they
reassured.
wanted you to come tell them jokes and all this stuff and go away. And if you tried to explain something serious, they just got mad. Just got mad. And then they would complain. And I remember the speakers bureaus would come and say, "Well, look, you do good in these groups, but these groups they don't like you at all." And I could tell that from the groups. So
Yeah.
if you went to an association meeting where there was lots of people, they had their wives or their husbands, depending on who was employed, and they didn't want to know anything. They had no interest in anything other than being entertained.
And also in the media. Now, for our listeners that are not familiar with Paul's background, he was the Assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan and held a number of government posts, and was really on the inside of it for many years, and really knows how it works. And you used to be widely published, and you were being interviewed on mainstream media, but then you became persona non grata because you weren't going along with the narrative. Correct?
Yeah, I became persona non grata really when the George W. Bush got in, and they used 9/11 to start all the wars in the Middle East. And if you said a word about that, it was I actually became unpopular before that with the George Herbert Walker Bush
Hmm.
because they were still trying to get rid of Reagan.
Yeah.
Um, most people understand the real political fights are not between the parties. It's within the party who controls it.
Hmm.
And Reagan was an outsider, like Trump. And so he was seen as a threat by the establishment, which was George Herbert Walker Bush.
Yeah.
He'd taken the presidential nomination from him, you know, and so Reagan and the people who would help him, like me, the Republican establishment saw us as the problem, not the Democrats,
Yeah.
because they might lose control of the party. And they were very afraid that Reagan, being the kind of guy he was, would be in there 2 terms, and then he would be succeeded by Jack Kemp, who was a young, dynamic, famous pro football quarterback, won in a Democrat district, even though he was Republican. And Reagan had adopted the Kemp-Roth bill, which I wrote, as his economic policy, and Kemp was set. And so they had to, they were scared. They said they were scared. They were worried they were gonna. So they made all the Reagan people in the government feel unwelcome.
Hmm.
They had all kinds of ways of doing this. For example, Reagan put me in the Treasury in charge of U.S. economic policy because I wrote the bill that he had adopted for his economic policy.
Hmm.
And I'm the one who got the bill out of the administration so the Congress could vote on it. You have to remember the Democrats passed it too. See? Well, when you have a big hand in the legislation that gets passed, when the president signs it, you're supposed to be invited to the signing ceremony, and you're given one of the signing pins. You
Yeah.
get a signing pin. Jim Baker, who was George Herbert Walker Bush right-hand man, he made sure I didn't get an invitation to the signings. You see what I mean? This was probably the first time in history that a guy that had the most to do with the bill didn't get invited to the sign. So they're telling you the whole time, you're on the wrong side, you're on the wrong side, you're on the wrong side. And that's all I heard from day one on.
Yeah.
Even, you see, I don't know if I told you this before, but when Reagan appointed me, guess what? A hole went on my appointment. Who? From the Democrats? Bob Dole, the Republican Senate leader. Why? All right. Roberts is Kemp's man. Dole also wanted to be president,
Hmm.
and he saw Kemp as the rival.
Yeah.
And so I don't want Kemp's man in there. He'll help Kemp in some way, and I won't get the nomination. So that's the way it works. I mean, it's not what people think. And the same thing happened when Jimmy Carter got in. The Democrats didn't want him. He's an outsider, some kind of
Right.
Christian from Georgia. What is this to do with Democrats, And he got elected. The people chose him. And so what happened to him? The first thing that happened was they created a fake case against his budget director, Burt Lance. They
Yeah.
framed up Lance. So Carter loses his budget director.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then they start on his chief of staff, Hamilton Jordan. They got some bimbo woman come make charges against Hamilton Jordan. And
Yeah.
so now Carter's had his balls cut off. Those guys are, so he's now staffed up with the Democrat regulars. He could never do anything. And they tried this with Reagan. In fact, they succeeded partly. I may have told you before, they got rid of Reagan's first two national security advisors.
Right.
The first one was gone in 2 weeks. And then the second one he appointed, last name was Clark, they got rid of him. And they do it with the press. The press creates up something and goes on and on about it. It's usually nothing. And then everybody runs and tells the president, well, it's going to be a real issue. It's going to distract you from your agenda, and you have to let them go just to get rid of this issue. This is what they always told every president. And this is how they get rid of the people who help the president.
Yeah.
They must have told Trump that about Flynn. Why in the world would you let somebody like Flynn go? The director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. I mean, he knows where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
If you can get somebody like that, you don't let them go. But they're all telling Trump, oh, look, this is an issue now. It's going to impede. You're going to start off on the wrong foot. It's going to impede your ability to do this, that, and the other. And so, and there's no one telling him any different.
But Paul, there are those who say that Trump is much smarter if he gets in again because of what he went through the first time, so that he could be more effective because he understands who's stabbing him in the back or who is likely to, and more of how Washington really works. But you say that that's not enough because there's not enough people he could find that will be on his side.
Yeah, there's not. He can't. The people don't exist in the first place. I wouldn't go back for any reasons. But other than that, I'm too old. I wouldn't want to go through that rigmarole again. That's a hard job.
Yeah.
And if they're really good, the Senate isn't going to confirm them. They're not going to get confirmed. The media will instantly start. There'll be some scandal.
Mm-hmm.
Some woman will come forward. They always can produce women to come forward.
Maybe now men.
Or men, yeah.
But that isn't even a scandal anymore. So I guess that they've got to do it now with the kids. That's one of the last few things that are frowned upon. They're trying to change even that. But there's a movie. There's a movie coming out about Reagan, and for our next encounter, our next interview together, I'd like to, after it comes out, I guess it's going to come out in the next few days. I'd like to hear your review of how the movie depicts Reagan and how the Reagan you knew differed from the movie version, if it does.
Well, I'd have to watch it.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's anybody still alive that knew Reagan. See, I was one of the youngest people in the administration.
Mm-hmm.
And the only ones that I know of is me and Pat Buchanan. I think Pat Buchanan's still alive.
Yeah.
But they're all dead. They're gone. So who do you ask?
Yeah.
And even a lot of time you can be in the administration all the time and still not know what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could go to some high-level meetings and come back, and everybody at the meeting had a different interpretation of what
Uh,
what the decision was. So, but it's an idea. Yeah, it's an idea. When you see it and you tell me where I can get it,
all right.
then we'll do it. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That whole history is so falsified, and it's going to be lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be lost. I was just thinking about how much information is going to die with me.
Now,
Never get out.
is there provisions for your papers to be controlled by a university or some organization where they'll be preserved and where they could be accessed?
Years ago, I think the University of Massachusetts asked me for them. And I haven't heard another word. I
Hmm.
would have thought that the Hoover Institution at Stanford would have asked for them
Yeah.
because I was part of them for years. My second book was published there at Stanford. And the Hoover Institution is a huge depository, and I knew everybody. I was there. I was associated with them for 20 years or long. And I had the same right that Milton Friedman had.
Hmm.
But they haven't asked for them. I think there's no real interest in reality or facts or what happened. I don't think people are interested, not even scholars. I don't think, in fact, I don't think scholarship really exists anymore. I think it's just narrative
Yeah.
nations. I think money has taken over. You think about a university, you think about a think tank. Well, a think tank has to represent the interests of the donors, or you don't get any damn money.
Right.
Universities are now so dependent on federal grants and on corporate grants and on grants from big foundations like Rockefeller, Pew, Ford, and they're all left wing. So the scholars don't have any independence. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, Paul, some would say, though, it's always been that way, but you're saying that it's much worse now than it has been in the past.
Yeah, you see, in the past, scholarship was financed out of the university's budget.
Yeah.
It's, I think it first happened in science. The equipment you had to have was so expensive. Universities simply couldn't afford it. So federal money took over physics and chemistry right away. Well, when I was a university professor for years, and but what has happened since my time, I'm told, is now if you are a professor in the department, you're like a major partner in a law firm. You're supposed to be a money
Yeah.
maker. You're supposed to get the clients, the grants.
Yeah.
And so if you're a big name professor, your job is to bring in money to finance the department. And so they all do studies that correspond with the needs of the grant givers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so scholarship disappears. They lose their independence.
Yeah.
And and just neutral things can't be done. Even things that don't hurt the interest of the grant givers, because the grant givers don't want neutral things. They want something that helps their agenda.
Even the medical groups now are in effect bought off. So, we're getting false studies on the effects of all the big pharma medications. And it's really such a danger to the public now because there's no accurate information anymore.
That's right. I think we've said before, um, the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine and the editor of the Lancet, these are the two most prestigious. The Lancet's British and New England Journal is, of course, American. The editors of both of them said a couple of years ago they have zero confidence in the articles they publish because 70% of them are written with big pharma research grants.
Incredible.
So the medicine, I just read today, I didn't get the time to read the whole thing. I've had a series of interviews today. But it's said now that doctors who were advocating treatment with ivermectin
Yeah.
were now having their licenses taken. Well, they've learned a lot of things about ivermectin. It not only is effective in stopping COVID, but it's proving to be highly effective in the treatment of things like cancer.
Yeah.
But you see, that's a threat to the chemo radiation establishment.
Yeah.
You see? And the chemo radiation establishment, which prolongs your life by making you suffer more.
Yeah.
And destroys your immune system so you can't fight the disease. They got so much money in that. They got to get somebody who says, look, there's a simple way to deal with nutrition, ivermectin. And so the doctors who actually know what they're doing, they got the evidence and all that, they're taking their licenses.
Yeah.
I think the whole medical system is being turned into a killing mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, money is controlling everything. Paul, when you think about the lack of social responsibility and morals with these CEOs and those around them, we're all part of the deal. They don't mind affecting the health or even killing thousands of people in the name of profits, and it's justified, it's rationalized.
Yeah.
I mean, keep this drug going, even though it's not effective or it's even harmful, but we're making money on it, as you just described. I mean, we're at a point now where morality is a lost concept.
That's right. I think anytime you weaken religion, you've destroyed the character of the people.
Yeah,
And I think that's what's happened to the American people. The liberals thought they were liberating us by rescuing us from religious dogmas.
yeah,
And what they did, they liberated us from moral constraints.
good way of putting it. Yeah.
And that's exactly what liberals have done.
And Paul, let me interject this. You do not have to be a believer in Christianity or even believe in God to realize that the traditional Western Christian Judeo values that made our civilization are the ones that have made it succeed, have held it together, have made it viable. So again, you could separate a belief in whether there really is a supreme being from the value of those Christian values.
That's right. If there are no religious constraints, the Satan in us all takes over and there's no moral character. And that's what we see today. There's no moral character. Somebody told me, a mother told me the other day that she and all her friends have their 12-year-old daughters on birth control. 12-year-old daughters already in sexual intercourse. The girls mature earlier than they did when I was a kid.
Yeah, because of the
By
food.
12 years old, they can give birth.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the women, they are harlots from 12 years old on.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
they're grooming, the schools are grooming kids for pedophiles.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you can't call them a pedophile. That's a hate term. You have to call them what is it? A minor attracted
Attracted
person.
person, right?
Minor attracted person. Everything is. Um, did you see um, an illegal alien who's been deported allegedly 16 times? Recently, back again, killed somebody, and the liberal prosecutors gave him 1 year in jail.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, the poor criminal. Well, what about the dead guy and his family? Oh, they don't count, they're white.
Now,
It's,
the
it's
perpetrators and those who don't do their job correctly, the incompetent people, they're not being termed. I know this for a fact. They're not being termed in the official literature of various organizations, even health organizations, as they're the second victim. Those who are not performing their jobs correctly, they're the second. It's not just the victim of those who are harmed by their screw ups, but they themselves who caused the screw up are the second victims because society or whatever failed them. And instead of them being fired or severely reprimanded, other people have to cover for them and work with them and respect their own nature. I mean, this is how absurd it's becoming, and it infuses all these organizations now.
Yeah, that's right. And I just saw too, I think it's Minneapolis, the Civil Rights Commission in Minneapolis have now created a protected category for immigrant invaders, and they are called justice impacted persons.
I saw that. I saw that.
All right, you're a justice and in other words, they're being given rights higher than the rights of U.S. citizens.
Yeah,
These are people who entered illegally, but they're justice impacted citizen. And so their illegal presence and illegal behavior has elevated them into a protected class.
yeah. And they're
Now,
also,
you
by the way,
tell
being
me, now the country's already gone.
yeah,
It's gone already.
and they're also being increasingly called newcomers,
Yeah,
not illegal immigrants. They're newcomers, our new neighbors. No,
newcomers.
they're controlling the language to control thought, just like in 1984.
Yeah, that's it. The language is controlled, and Trump supporters are the deplorables and the domestic terrorists, and whites are racist, and men are misogynist.
But it's all being turned around now because there's good vibes coming out of the Democratic National Convention and surrounding Kamala and Walz. So good vibrations will help save us. Paul, we could go on and on forever, but this is enough for now before I get depressed with all the swimming in my mind. But
I know.
Paul, it's always a pleasure to talk with you and get your perspective. And the accumulated wisdom you've developed because you've experienced so much of this firsthand, not just what you read filtered through the media, but you were there in Washington, you saw it firsthand. And you were long ago became a realist, and all the illusions we have is something that you've already seen through. So once again, Paul, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you, Larry. I look forward to discussing things with you. You make a lot of sense, and it's always a pleasure to talk to somebody who's got his head screwed on right.
Let's hope they continue to let us talk, at least for a while. So,
Okay.
all
Yeah, I
right,
don't
Paul.
think we have long.
And we're laughing about it.
I know.
Gallows
What else
humor.
can you do?
Gallows humor. Paul, thanks a lot. We'll see you again.
All right.